Democratic State Representative Mihaela Plesa, thank you so much. Welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thank you so much for having me back.
So congratulations on your re-election. You won by a bigger margin this time around, and even though Governor Abbott said that he thought he was going to flip your seat. So what was the key to your victory?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank the constituents of House District 70 for re-electing me to another term. It is the honor of my life to represent them in the Texas House. I think that the reason why we won is because we stuck to the basics. We stuck to the issues: public education, public health, public safety. We weren't distracted by cultural issues, lies and disinformation, and we just knocked on every door and asked for every vote, and I'm just really grateful to get back to work and to serve my community.
You have filed 11 bills so far for the upcoming legislative session that starts January 14th, and 7 of those bills were about public education. So give me a summary of what it is that you are filing as far as these 7 bills are concerned.
Yeah, so I wish it would have been more. I can only file the bills that Legislative Council is getting back to me, so we're filing them as quick as Legislative Council is getting them back. But I was saying that public education is going to be our biggest fight going into the next legislative session. We know that education savings accounts or vouchers are going to be a top priority for the governor, and so as a recapture district, it is going to be crucial for districts like mine to make sure that we are keeping our money in our districts. And so I have set our first legislative priorities to be about taxparency, transparency around taxation, making sure that the monies that we are sending back to Austin stay in public education, but that initially most of the money that we pay in our property taxes, if they are public education dollars, that they stay in our district. So that was my #1 campaign promise, and that is what we're leading on our legislative agenda with.
You brought up school choice. Governor Abbott has said he's got the votes for it. And so how do you and other Democrats try to block it?
Look, we don't know what the votes are until the bill is up. We don't even know what this bill is going to look like. There's been a couple of bills proposed, but I have some of my colleagues that are saying that the bills that were proposed last session were irresponsible financially, and they were bad bills. These were bad voucher bills, right? So thank God the bipartisan coalition stood together and defeated this voucher scam. We need to make sure that what these bills look like are universal, and making sure that the constitutional requirements that the state of Texas has to educate 5 million children is implemented. And that's what I'm looking for. And so we have to be really careful when we're talking about these vouchers, these ESAs, schools choice, right? We have to look at what other states have implemented and what it's done to their budgets. We're getting reports every day of how it's blown these states' budgets, and we cannot risk the Texas miracle, right? And so it's not that I'm against parental choice, but we have to be real here. If you get this voucher and your kid does not get accepted to the private school of their choice, what happens then? What if the kid gets accepted to this private school and it doesn't work out for them and they have to go back to a public school? What happens then? I mean, these are all conversations that we need to start having in the legislature, right? And so I'm prepared to work with my colleagues to pass good public education funding legislation, and that's what I'm ready to go back to Austin to do.
On your point about if a student has to go back to a public school, why would there be any question? They would go back, wouldn't there?
Well, not if the school's tuition has been appropriated through an ESA, right? That money is going to be controlled through another agency. That's not going through the normal channels of school funding.
But as far as like the next year, it's done on a yearly basis, is it not?
Well, we have to look at what that bill's going to look like, right? So these are all questions that I had when I was knocking doors, that people had when they were saying, these voucher plans, they don't sound sound to us.
The governor and supporters of school choice have said that the funding is not going to come directly from schools. It's going to come from the general fund, not the school foundation program. So you're shaking your head, you don't buy it.
No, I don't. You look, we know how public schools are funded. We know how schools are funded in this state. We are talking about taking money from taxpayers and sending it to private schools. That's what ESAs are. That's what vouchers are. And so we need to make sure that we create accountabilities for Texas taxpayers and for their money. We're talking about 5 million children here. We're talking about the future workforce of America. These are very serious decisions that we're making.
And when you say accountability, are you talking about accountability on those private schools? Are you talking about accountability budget-wise?
Absolutely both, right? What are these schools, what are the accountability factors for these private schools? What are the testing accountability factors? Who are the teachers that are teaching there? What is the security standards there as well? Are the counseling standards there, right? And so these are the things that I'm going to be looking at when we're talking about introducing any kind of ESA or voucher system.
One of the things that I think I remember from the last time we spoke is your support for changing the model of how public school funding is from an attendance-based system, which we have now, to an enrollment-based, basically what the first week of school of how many students are in a district. Is that right?
Yeah, well, we saw after COVID that what we're doing is not working, right? And so I'm not the only one that's proposed legislation like this or has looked at models like this. There's been other members that have said that we need to look at other ways to start funding our systems, right? This is just one way, right? But I also think that we need to have more allotments, right? Last session we talked about security allotments. We saw the governor, restrict some of that money around security allotments. We also need to have a conversation about mental health allotments as well, right? And so there's a lot of things that we can do when we talk about school funding, and we're going to have a really big job next session. The comptroller is saying that we are going to be hopefully going in with a surplus again. And so we're going to have an opportunity to go back into the legislative session and show our constituents that we're serious when we talk about our kids.
Just staying on the enrollment model that you support, I asked Texas Education Agency Commissioner Mike Morath about this recently, and he opposes that. He said that would be a mistake because there wouldn't be an incentive for the school districts to make sure that their students are actually showing up, which is what the current system, he says, does.
Well, it's unfortunate that he feels that way. I think that we can look at that system, and I think that we can look at incentive systems, right, to make sure that what he's talking about doesn't happen. And it's unfortunate that he's unwilling to think outside the box and bring some ideas if that's what he thinks is the only reason why we shouldn't implement something that we know during COVID really, really hurt our kids. We know that we're seeing after we're seeing after school shootings. Kids need mental health breaks, or attempted violence on school campuses. Kids need mental health breaks. And so we know that the system is broken, and we know that we need to look at the system in a different fashion. And so that's not an issue to kind of like throw the baby away with the bathwater.
Teacher pay raises.
Yes.
I know everybody says they support this. Do you think that the legislature should set aside money specifically for these school districts for teacher pay raises? In other words, saying we're giving you X amount of dollars, this has to be spent on raising teacher salaries?
I think that we've had this conversation last session as well, and for me, my answer is yes. It's very, very important that our teachers feel respected within the profession, that they can stay and afford to be in the profession. I had multiple teachers coming into my office last session who had second or third jobs, and that's just really unacceptable for teachers in Texas, right? And so I think that there should be something that we're doing to make sure that we are letting teachers know we're hearing you, and we're making this a priority. And so it shouldn't be used as kind of like a carrot and a stick situation like we saw last session. We should come in and we should be serious when we're having these conversations.
I want to ask you about some other bills that you filed. One of them is on abortion, the exceptions allowing for abortions. Talk to me a little bit about what your bill entails.
Yeah, so, we know that women who are over the age of 35 tend to have higher risk pregnancies. These are actually considered geriatric pregnancies. Women over the age of 35 also tend to be seeking alternative reproductive technologies when it comes to pregnancies, like IVF. Women like me who have a journey with infertility. And so these women tend to need access to abortion more. And so I filed legislation to carve out exemptions for women over the age of 35, women seeking alternative reproductives to pregnancy, right? And so that's one of the bills that I filed, but also children who are violent victims of rape. They should have an exemption clause as well.
And how do you see that all shaking out? Because, the Democrats are in the minority at the state capitol, and in the House, Republicans picked up 2 seats. So what is your plan to try to work with Republicans on getting some of your priorities passed?
Well, look, I have a record of success when it comes to working with Republicans, and I hope to continue to build on that record. Bipartisanship should not be an ugly word, and I would hope that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are taking these headlines seriously. Just the other day, we heard of another woman who has died because they could not get access to abortion in this state. These are real women who are dying. These are real women who are bleeding out in hospital lobbies. And my colleagues who are pro-life, this should be unacceptable to them. They keep talking about the babies that they've saved, but they're not talking about they're not talking about the women that are dying. They're not talking about infant mortality rates that are going up. That's children dying. That's a tragedy for Texans. And so I would hope that some of these exemptions to abortion bills get a hearing in the Public Health Committee this year, at least one of them. We need to at least have one of these bills get a hearing.
I know the legislature did address the infant mortality problem the last session, expanding health care for mothers to a year from 6 months. Do you think more needs to be done? And do you think more would be done?
Yeah, I definitely think more needs to be done. I think more needs to be done when we're seeing that we're rolling back 15 years of progress in infant mortality in this state. I think more needs to be done when I'm knocking on doors in my district and I'm hearing stories about silent births. I think more needs to be done. I wish that I didn't have to file bills about warming cots or cuddle cots, but I'm going to have to file a bill about that, because families are giving births to silent births, to stillbirths, and that's unacceptable.
And I wanted to ask you about another bill that you filed that would enable the legislature to override Governor Abbott, in this case, his veto. What chance do you think that's going to have in passing?
Look, this bill is actually a very serious bill. This bill came because of his veto of Article 10. A few sessions ago. We are the only legislature that meets every 2 years that doesn't have an override veto statute, right? And so what that means is that our governor has unwielding power of the veto pen. And we have seen that he is not afraid to use it in what I think are unethical ways. 73 bills last session vetoed by the governor because he didn't like the fact that lawmakers stood up for their districts. That's unacceptable, and I don't think the people of Texas want to live under that kind of authoritarian rule, right? And so I would think that lawmakers would want to take back a little bit of power for themselves and pass, and this is a constitutional this is a change to the Constitution. So this will actually have to go before the people of Texas, the voters, right?
But before that happens, it's got to pass the legislature.
2/3, right? So this is a very serious, important bill, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. And it will go before the people, and I think the people agree. I don't think they want a governor that's going to veto really important bills like the dangerous dog bill. I had a dangerous dog case in my district, right? And the governor vetoed that bill. I have constituents that were mauled in my district that would have benefited from a bill that the governor vetoed.
What was in the legislation?
It would have given some protection, some protections for victims that were injured, attacked by dangerous dogs, and it would have also had some accountability measures for pet owners.
And are you going to try again?
Well, it wasn't my bill wasn't the dangerous dog bill, but I'm saying other lawmakers had bills that were vetoed that were important bills for constituents in my district, right? These were bills that the governor had no reason to veto besides the fact that he didn't like that lawmakers stood up against vouchers.
But is that a bill that is something you would be interested in filing, or?
Oh, I'm definitely going to support Representative Compos's dangerous dog bill, and I definitely hope that it passes the legislature again and this time doesn't get vetoed by the governor.
State Representative Mihaela Plesa of Plano, thank you so much.
Such an honor. Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Pleasure.